Many people believe they will only find peace when everything around them falls completely silent. But the truth is different. You could be on vacation, money in the bank, no one demanding anything from you, and still feel like your mind is collapsing from the inside. Because real tranquility does not depend on your circumstances. It depends on the internal structure you have built to face them. And that structure does not crumble all at once. It fractures quietly. A recurring irritation, a word you never fully processed, a tension that grows without warning. Until you realize it was never the world pulling you off center. It was your mind that stopped protecting itself. But there is a way back. There are attitudes that fortify your calm. Not magic formulas, Stoic habits, practical and profound. They change how you react, how you interpret, how you live. And today in this video, I am going to show you 10 Stoic habits that restore your inner peace. The first one begins with a decision. Respond with firmness, like someone who has already understood that true peace is not begged for. It is built. Write in the comments, "Today I choose calm. I am a Stoic." Because when your awareness awakens, even the things that once disturbed you become too small to shake you. Now, before we begin, I want to ask two things. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That is the only way this content reaches more people. Now let us get started. Habit 1. Before you react, breathe. Picture the scene. You are stuck in traffic, the clock is pressing down on you, your phone is buzzing nonstop, and everything around you seems designed to push you over the edge. Your mind already woke up running, trying to solve problems that have not even started yet. And then, like a test from the universe, a car cuts you off with complete disregard, and on top of that, lays on the horn as if you were the one at fault. In that moment, every part of you demands a reaction. The anger rises like dry fire, and the impulse is clear. Respond in kind, and make it known that you will not tolerate being disrespected. But right there is where the difference begins between someone who lives at the mercy of the world and someone who has learned to protect themselves from within. As Epictetus said, it is not things that disturb us, but the judgments we form about them. The situation itself is neutral. What shifts is the lens through which you see it. You can interpret that moment as a personal attack and react as though you are a walking battlefield. Or you can do what very few dare to do. Pause. Breathing before you react is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of silent resistance. It is as if, by breathing deeply, you raise an invisible shield between yourself and the chaos. As if you are saying, "In here, I am the one in charge." That pause is a decision, and decisions change destinies. Breathing changes your heart rate. It changes the tone of your voice. It changes the direction of the conversation. Breathing is not just oxygen. It is emotional intelligence in its purest form. In the seconds you take to breathe, you gain time. And time is power. Time to think, to gain perspective, to choose. And it is in that interval where freedom lives. The freedom to not become the same as whoever wronged you. The next time you feel your blood starting to boil, make a deal with yourself. Before any word, any gesture, any decision, inhale, hold, exhale. Let the air move through the space where anger wants to settle, because emotional maturity begins right there, in that invisible space between the trigger and the response. Train yourself in this. Make your breath your first shield, because the person who breathes before reacting lives with far less regret afterward. Habit 2. Observe, but do not absorb. Have you ever caught yourself turning a phrase someone said to you hours ago over and over in your mind? It was not a direct attack. Maybe it was not even intentional, but there was something in the tone, in what was left unsaid, that got trapped inside you. And even though the conversation had long since ended, that word was still there like an irritating echo, knocking around in your head. You tried to continue your day normally, but your mind kept drifting back to that moment, imagining what you should have said, how you could have defended yourself, or simply trying to understand why it stung so much. And without realizing it, you allowed an external comment to become internal noise. That is what happens when we stop observing and start absorbing. When we do not treat a provocation for what it actually is, something external, and instead let it install itself inside us as though it has a right to stay. But it does not, and it never did. Epictetus already warned us about this. If someone tries to hurt you, it is your own judgment that creates the wound. It is not what they say that causes pain. It is what you believe about what they said. The offense does not walk in on its own. You are the one who lets it through. Your mind should be like a well-kept house, clean, protected, quiet inside. You would not let a stranger walk in with muddy shoes. You would not allow someone to shout in the middle of your living room. So why allow words loaded with contempt, sarcasm, or judgment to walk freely through your thoughts? Emotional maturity lives in the ability to listen without becoming contaminated, to witness an aggressive attitude and understand that it says far more about the other person's confusion than it does about you. To keep your center intact, even when everything around you seems determined to knock you out of it. The next time someone throws an empty criticism at you, a careless joke, a comment that lacks any sensitivity, visualize it as an object hurled against a wall. It may hit, it may make noise, but it only gets inside if the wall is already cracked. That is why you must reinforce your internal boundary, so that what comes from the outside does not change who you are on the inside. You can hear everything and absorb only what is useful. You can observe without carrying the weight. You can perceive without reacting. And when you do, you will notice that the silence of not reacting is often more powerful than any response you could give. Habit 3. Do not enter pointless fights. Some arguments do not begin because of a difference in ideas. They begin because someone felt threatened. Sometimes all it takes is one poorly chosen word, a sideways glance, or even a silence that gets misread as an insult. In a matter of seconds, what was nothing more than a misunderstanding becomes a confrontation. And by the time you realize it, you are in the middle of a war. You cannot even explain how it started. This is how we waste energy on things that are not worth it, on fights that teach us nothing, transform us in no way, and in the end, leave us with nothing but exhaustion and frustration. Because in the heat of the moment, no one is listening. No one wants to understand. Everyone just wants to win. But win what exactly? As Marcus Aurelius said, avoid pointless disputes because they lead the soul astray. And he knew exactly what he was talking about. Because when you enter a useless argument, even if you get the last word, you lose something invisible. You lose time, you lose peace, you lose focus. And sometimes you even lose respect for yourself. It is easy to get pulled in, to answer the provocation, play the game, fight to be right. But that only proves that you are still being governed by your impulses. The harder thing is to step back, look at the situation, breathe, and ask yourself, if I win this argument, what do I actually gain? Most of the time, the answer is nothing. There is no trophy waiting at the end of a conflict, only wear and tear. So what can you do? You can choose silence. Not as an escape, but as protection. not as a weakness, but as mastery. Refusing the invitation into chaos is an act of inner strength. It is telling yourself that your time, your energy, your peace are not for sale, that you do not have to prove anything to anyone, that your growth matters more than being right, and that some battles are won precisely by refusing to fight them. You are not here to win arguments. You are here to gain clarity, to grow, to move forward. The next time someone tries to drag you into a pointless confrontation, remember, it is not cowardice to choose silence. Cowardice is losing yourself just to feed your ego. Habit 4. Change the thought, not the problem. Sometimes what destroys you is not what happened. It is what you decided that meant. You went through a criticism, a cold comment, an attitude that caught you off guard. And in the very next instant, your mind constructed a story, not just about what occurred, but about your worth, your capability, your place in the world. That criticism became a verdict. That phrase became a portrait. And that moment became a distorted reflection of who you believe yourself to be. This is how human beings operate when running on autopilot. We do not respond to facts. We respond to the stories we build around those facts. Seneca already warned us about this. He said that suffering is born more from the opinions we form than from the situations we actually live through. And that is one of the great traps of the mind. It invents, exaggerates, and dramatizes. And without noticing, you end up carrying a weight that does not come from the world, but from your interpretation of it. The Stoics trained themselves to do the opposite. They did not look for comfort in motivational phrases. They looked for clarity through difficult questions. When something hit them, they did not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They asked, "How can I grow from this? Does this actually say something about me? Or does it say more about the other person? What am I accepting as truth without even examining it?" That shift in the questions is what makes it possible to rewrite the thought. You do not erase what happened, but you change where it lives inside you. And that shift is liberating. You stop being ambushed by automatic thoughts and start acting with discernment. Instead of reinforcing the wound, you transform the impact into fuel. Instead of being paralyzed by the criticism, you begin to see it as an opportunity to become even stronger from within. Rewriting the thought is not about denying the pain. It is about removing the power it holds over you. It is like looking at a storm and saying, "I do not control the rain, but I know where to build shelter." And that shelter is built with conscious decisions, with new ways of interpreting, with the habit of refusing to accept the first thought as if it were absolute truth. Here is the practice. Every time something affects you, write down what happened, and just below it, write 3 alternative versions of the same event. 1 more neutral, 1 more optimistic, 1 more strategic. Observe how your mind responds to each one. Train yourself in this every day, and you will realize that the mind is malleable. It reconfigures over time, as long as you are willing to be the author of your thoughts and not just a spectator. Because in the end, it is not the world that has to change for you to find peace. It is the meaning you assign to what the world presents to you. And that meaning has always been in your hands. Habit 5. Stop expecting others to act the way you would. One of the most silent causes of human frustration is expecting others to carry the same heart as yours, to think the way you think, to act the way you act, to return in the same measure everything you give. You show up with integrity, you offer support, you act with loyalty. And deep down, even if you never admit it, You expect that same investment to come back to you, but many times it does not. You give respect and receive disrespect. You are warm and receive coldness. You are transparent and receive silence. And then the bitter cycle begins. The mind tries to understand, to justify, to find reason in it. But the only thing that grows is the feeling of injustice. Am I the problem, you ask yourself? But you are not. It is the expectation you created, the one that said the other person would act like you. Marcus Aurelius said, "Expect men to act according to their nature, not according to your will." And that changes everything. Because as long as you keep expecting others to treat you with the same awareness you carry inside, you are going to keep hurting yourself. People do not act based on what you deserve. They act based on what they know, what they have learned, what they carry. And that includes traumas, limitations, fears, and wounds you have no way of seeing. Accepting this reality is not surrendering to people. It is freeing yourself from the need to be understood by someone who does not yet know how to understand. It is recognizing that each person gives what they can from their own level of awareness, and that demanding maturity from someone still living on autopilot is like expecting a seed to behave like a tree. It will not happen, and you will disappoint yourself every time you expect it. So instead of waiting for exact reciprocity, act out of conviction. Keep being loyal, fair, clear, not because someone deserves it, but because that is who you are. You do not do good to control anyone else. You do good to remain whole. And that is an act of inner strength, not naivety. But do not confuse this. This is not about accepting anything and everything. It is about setting boundaries. It is about learning to calibrate what you offer based on what the other person is emotionally capable of receiving. It is about stopping the exhaustion of trying to change someone who has not yet decided to change. And above all, it is about protecting your energy from the frustration born of one fundamental error: expecting sweet fruit from someone who has not yet put down roots. Here is the practice. When someone disappoints you, instead of draining yourself or blaming yourself, write down what you expected. And beside it write, "That was my expectation, not an obligation of theirs." That single act realigns your vision with reality. It gives you back the power to keep being who you are, without poisoning yourself from the inside, trying to make sense of something that was never in your control. Because true peace does not come from getting others to act the way you wish they would. It comes from learning to stand firm even when they cannot, and remaining whole even when no one acknowledges it. Habit 6. Master your body to master your mind. Most people try to calm the mind with arguments, but they forget that the mind listens to the body first. When anger arrives, it does not send a warning. It announces itself as heat rising up your back, pressure in your stomach, tension in your jaw. The body fires the alarm before the thought is even formed. And if you are not paying attention, you are already reacting before you ever realized what happened. Epictetus taught that the first step toward self-control is mastering what others can see: the body, the expression, the tone of voice, and only afterward mastering what no one sees: the thoughts. And that makes complete sense, because the body is the immediate messenger of emotion. When you close yourself off physically, accelerate your breathing, harden your shoulders, you are sending a clear signal to your brain: we are in danger, even when you are not. And that single message distorts everything: your perception, the way you speak, your decisions. This is why every Stoic learned to begin with the body. So before you speak, breathe. Before you react, Release your shoulders. Before you make a decision, notice what state you are in, because many times it is not the situation pressuring you. It is your body that is already in defense mode, even when there is no actual threat. Mastering the body does not mean pretending to be calm. It means gradually building the physiology of serenity. It is when everything is pushing you to shout, and you lower your voice instead. When everything in you wants to charge forward, and you take a step back. That is where you reverse the dynamic. And this is not just about self-control. It is about emotional leadership. If you do not lead your own body, your instincts will lead you. And in that state, you will always react as a reflex, not as a choice. Real power belongs to the one who observes their own agitation and chooses to act despite it. The one who feels the heat of fury rising and refuses the invitation to explode. Want a real practice? Choose a moment in your day when you tend to get irritated. It could be traffic, an email no one answered, a tense meeting. And before reacting, do this. Breathe slowly for 3 seconds and roll your neck. It seems small, but that gesture sends a new signal to the brain. We are in control. And that, repeated over time, trains your mind to respond with clarity even in the middle of chaos. Because the body is the first to be affected, and it can also be the first to save you. The person who learns to read its signals gains time, and the one who gains time gains power. The power to no longer be pulled under by their own reaction. And if you want to learn more about emotional self-control, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every video can be one step closer to your strength. Habit 7. Distance yourself from what throws you off balance. There are places where the soul learns to make itself smaller. You walk in smiling, but gradually you go quiet. Not because you lack courage, because there is simply too much tension in the air. Sometimes it is not even explicit. No one attacks you. No one throws you out. But something inside you feels it. I cannot breathe here. And yet you stay. Because you tell yourself it is just a phase. Because you were taught to endure. Because you believe that with time, everything will settle. But what actually settles is your threshold. You start to normalize living in a state of alert, walking carefully as though everything is fragile. It begins to feel normal to be exhausted and pretend everything is fine. But Epictetus said, if something weakens your soul, walk away. Do not negotiate with what destabilizes you. Do not get so used to emotional discomfort that you start treating it as part of the cost of living. Picture your mind as a glass of clean water. Every toxic environment, every manipulative presence, every relationship that demands too much drops a little dark ink into that glass. At first, the water still looks clear, but day after day, you become murky without even noticing it. Until one day you look at yourself and no longer recognize what you see. That is why distance is necessary. Not as punishment, as purification. It is not about running from problems. It is about stopping the slow poisoning of staying where nothing will change. You can continue being a good person without continuing to make yourself available for everything. You can remain whole even if you step away from what drains you. Here's the practice. Identify one cycle that exhausts you, a repetitive conversation, an obligation that was imposed on you, a group where you disappear into the background. Set a clear boundary. It could be a one-day break, reduced time, or simply choosing silence. Observe what happens inside you during that interval. If you feel lighter, that is your answer. You never needed that weight to begin with, because there are places where your presence does not flourish. It only endures. And enduring everything is not virtue. It is self-abandonment. Maturity is knowing when to stay and knowing when to leave. Habit 8. Practice Stoic empathy every single day. There is a kind of wisdom that does not announce itself. It simply observes and moves differently. The Stoics called it seeing beyond the surface. Imagine that every person who crosses your path is carrying a backpack. You cannot see what is inside, but they feel every bit of the weight. Some carry anger, others carry fear, and some have not even realized what they are hauling. And you, knowing none of this, end up absorbing the overflow. Maybe it is a coworker who treats you with coldness, a colleague who snaps back at you, a family member who speaks as though everything is your fault. Your instinct tells you to react, but wisdom tells you to look again. Is this person actually speaking to me? Or are they speaking to every world that has ever hurt them? Stoic empathy is not about putting yourself in the other person's shoes. It is about recognizing that the other person may not even know where they are standing. It is about understanding that what is happening is not personal. It is historical. And more than that, it is about deciding that you will not amplify that cycle. Marcus Aurelius practiced this even with his political enemies. Before judging someone, he would ask himself, if I had lived the same life as this person, thought the same thoughts, suffered the same losses, would I truly have acted any differently? That reflection, held with honesty, does not transform the other person, but it transforms the way you see them. And that changes everything. Because when you stop expecting coherence from someone living in internal conflict, you also stop being disappointed. When you understand that it is not about you, you free yourself from the attack. And when you refuse to play the victim, you become the author of your own response. Here is a Stoic practice for the coming days. Choose one difficult person in your life. Someone close to you, someone at work, someone who always seems to be on the defensive. Instead of building stories about them, they do not like me, they are arrogant. Try the opposite. Write down 3 possible invisible reasons for their behavior, not to justify, but to soften the hardness of your judgment. You will notice something interesting. When the mind opens toward understanding, the body responds with lightness. The irritation dissolves, the tone changes, the friction melts away, and the conflict that seemed inevitable never even begins. Stoic empathy is that, acknowledging the weight without carrying it, seeing the pain in another without making it your own. Deciding that your emotional state does not depend on who passes through, but on who remains. You. Habit 9. Cut the excess. Live what is essential. There are days when you reach the end completely drained, but you cannot point to anything genuinely important that you actually accomplished. You look back and see only quick replies, interruptions, tasks that felt urgent in the moment, but now carry no real meaning. It is as though your energy was stolen by the small things, and at a fundamental level it was. Seneca said that happiness lives in focusing on what matters, but the world pushes you in the opposite direction. It fills you with distractions, provocations, false urgencies. And if you do not choose what occupies your attention, someone else will choose it for you. You react to a rude message. You respond to a criticism that was not even worth engaging. You get annoyed at someone cutting in line. You enter arguments that change nothing. And at the end of the day, you are mentally exhausted from things that should not have lasted more than 5 seconds. The Stoics called this death by 1,000 invisible cuts. You do not fall from one heavy blow. You fall from the daily accumulation of small, invisible losses of focus. The solution is to live with intention, to choose what is genuinely worth your investment, like someone deciding carefully what to plant in fertile soil. Because every thought you feed, every emotion you cultivate, is a seed, and everything you water grows. Here's the Stoic exercise for today. The next time something bothers you, before reacting, ask yourself 2 simple questions. Will this matter in 5 days? Will it matter in 5 years? If the answer is no, do not pursue it. Do not spend energy where there is no return. Do not treat your attention as though it were inexhaustible.